It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey there, before we kick off, I want to share a really important thought. 71% of you who watch this channel frequently don't subscribe. So if you've enjoyed any video you've ever watched, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps the channel more than you think, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. So let's go. Hey there, welcome to the ToolShed podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Haydn Simmons from Pice, just put my teeth back in, Price a Plan. He is a...
we sell pies.
Yeah, he is a repeat offender. There he is there. So welcome to the podcast. Now, before we start,
Thanks,
I've
Mick.
got to make sure I promote our Builders Freedom Readiness Scorecard. So the link's in the description. Take 2 minutes to answer those questions and you'll get your score really quickly and some suggestions as to what you can do to get more ready for freedom. And we're going to be talking about all number of topics with Haydn. But for those who haven't met you before, Haydn, because you've been on the podcast previously, give us the short version of how you ended up doing what you're doing and the Price a Plan story.
The Price a Plan long and windy journey to becoming an estimator.
Yeah.
It is a long and windy journey. So I left high school, did nursing, didn't like that. Travelled overseas, worked in bars, ended up sailing yachts, delivering yachts. What else did I do? Did a bit of furniture restoration. Ended up getting a job for Diana Ross, was a nanny for Diana Ross in America for a while.
Well, I haven't heard any of that.
Went up to Canada, planted trees, then worked in kids' camps, taught water skiing, then started working in the film industry, building sets. Came back to Australia, building sets, and then transitioned into carpentry license to builder's license, ran my own building business for a number of years, had an injury, was off the tools, had to find a gap. I had to fill the gap, so I started doing a little bit of estimating just as a gap filler, and that was almost 18 years ago, and now we've grown to be, I think, probably one of Australia's largest estimating providers around Australia. So was that short enough?
I feel quite puffed out listening to it, really. I thought I'd done a bit, but there's not a patch on that. The estimating is the bane of many builders' existence, and so obviously, if you're listening to this, folks, and estimating gives you the shits or soaks up too much time, I'm a big proponent of asking who, not how, rather than going, how do I improve my estimating? Don't worry about it. Just get somebody else to do it who does it all the time and who's a specialist. So we haven't spoken, at least not on the podcast, for a year, maybe more.
I think about a year and a half, I think, last time I was on.
So many things must have happened, particularly if we just sort of take notice of the story you just told, where you was doing stuff for Diana Ross and delivering boats and all of this sort of stuff. You don't stand still for very long. So in the last 18 months, what have you noticed in relation to the building industry and any shifts that are happening? Because before I pressed the go button, we were talking about AI and all that sort of stuff. So there's some external things, economy-wise as well as technology-wise, that have to influence the building industry. What are you noticing of late that's been changing and shifting?
The big things that I've noticed is, but doing this as long as we have, we noticed the cycle. We've really tuned into the cycle of the rushes and the quiet periods in the industry. So, and that cycle has become slightly more exacerbated, I would say. So what I mean by the cycle is you'd always notice that there's a rush into Christmas, there's a rush into Easter, and then the financial year is quiet, and then the rush into Christmas starts again. There's that cycle. And we have noticed that over the pattern in our business that there's always been a cycle, but that cycle has got higher and lower spikes.
Wow.
So that's curious, and that's just based on the volume of business that comes through our company. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, and why that is, I don't really know. I think it probably becomes down to uncertainty in the marketplace. People are uncertain about when, there's the sustainability of their money and their income. I think there's a bit of uncertainty there. I don't know. I'm not an economist, just truly trying to speculate. The other thing that we've observed is that project value has drastically changed.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate reality that the majority of projects that come through now are all related to the people in the marketplace that can afford to spend the money. And the smaller style of projects, we're just not seeing as many of them. So years back, we'd have a good balance of, smaller ma and pa homeowners that we just wanted to do a bathroom and a deck, or a master bedroom and an ensuite. That's what we would call a smaller renovation, sort of around the 100 to 200,000. Now it's almost rare that we see anything coming through the system that's under $1 million, and it's not uncommon for to see projects that are in the $6 to $10 million project value.
Wow!
So that's a really interesting thing. That's like the people that are doing the work and that are spending the money that's like the rich are richer, the poor are poorer gap, I think, is a really interesting thing. So what I think the builders are doing, the builders that are succeeding and doing well in that space, is they are refining their approach and their marketing systems so that they're targeting those type of clients as well. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've observed is project type and value.
So in your observations then, because, you before I pressed the go button, you said I've been doing a lot of deep thinking about things, and I tend to do that as well. And something that sort of I've been thinking about over the time, like just the increase in real estate prices has significantly affected the commission levels that a real estate agent would get. They're not doing anything any better or any more, but their income has gone up significantly simply because the price of what they're selling has gone up.
Yeah.
Yes. What impact has that had with builders as far as financial management, risk, stress, and all of that sort of stuff? Because, a guy, say 10 years ago, might have done 4 or 5 projects a year, and they might have been, $450,000 a project or something like that. And so they were managing a little less than a couple of $1 million. And now, with what you've just said then, they could be managing $10 million plus a year. What effect is that having on builders, maybe stress levels, risk problems? What have you noticed in that in relation to that?
Well, that's such a real issue, isn't it? I mean, to put the cost of building into perspective, because I imagine there are probably some people that listen to this that are bystanders to the industry. I imagine, Mick, your reach and your podcast is so huge.
Yeah, we've got 3 listeners now. One of each sex. Just a perspective on the cost of building, right? When I remember when we first started Pricer Plan, and we were using not that you price projects based on square meter rates, you never do that, but it is a yardstick as to how much things are costing at the current time. Yes.
Right. And when we first started, I remember when it went from 900 per square meter to 1,400 per square meter. It was like, whoa, there's a shift. $1,400 per square meter to build. And then I remember it was like, whoa, it's 2,500. And then around COVID, it was just like, whoa, it's 3,000 per square meter. Now it's 5,000 to 8,000 per square meter. The starting point on build projects is near 4,000 per square meter. So it's just this crazy spike in the building costs, and there's a whole myriad of reasons why global economies and local economies have pushed that. But you're right, back to your question, how are the builders coping with that stress? Because their first claim, if you're doing a structured claim stage from, deposit to base stage to frame stage, they're can be carrying $1 million leading up to their first claim because the contract values are so much higher. So it's got to be taking a toll, right? It's got to be taking a toll. And I see that there are some guys that sort of seem to just cruise along through it and they manage it well, appear to manage it well. And I do see other guys that I would sort of describe them as just sort of flapping in the breeze a little bit. I'm really curious, what's the difference there? What's the difference between the guys that seem to have management and managing that stress as to guys that are just, they're sweating buckets waiting for that first claim to come through because they're already without money.
Have you noticed have you been involved in any conversations where the impact of potentially being blamed for that price rise, that significant price rise, is having on any builders? Because it seems quite common that people only want to remember what they remember. And my brother-in-law built a house for $600,000, back in 2017, which was only a few days ago. And now you're quoting me 1.6 million. You're a rip-off. Builders are expensive. Builders are just ripping, and there is so many reasons as to why that's gone from whatever you said it was, $1,000 a square metre to $8,000 a square metre. It's not the builder. No. I don't know too many builders that are making significantly more money now that building prices have gone up significantly. Probably the opposite.
No, I totally agree. So what was the question though?
There was no question. It was just an observation.
Observation.
Well, I guess the question was, have you heard of any conversations or,
about the blame,
about being blamed when they're not really to blame? I think that's highly unfair myself.
Well, I can weave that into what was your original question: differences and changes that I've seen in the industry, and for the better. What I've seen builders doing far more effectively and more religiously now is they're employing a education process when they get an inquiry.
Yeah.
And so they're employing a pre-construction process that guides the client from inquiry through to budget assessment, through to detailed estimate, through to contract, through to delivery. So the builders that are able to have a structured pre-construction process are definitely the ones that seem to be managing the stress better. And those type of pre-construction processes are very much a new fad, a new thing, I would say. Within the last 3 years, we've really seen them spike. We see a lot of our clients now actually have a dedicated staff member that's a pre-construction manager. They just sit in that slot only, just managing the client from inquiry, getting an understanding of what their budget ideas are, educating them as to what the industry is doing. So it's another little niche within the building, the makeup of a whole building business that builders have had to employ in order to guide that miscommunication or that misconception about what things cost.
Yeah. Before I hit the go button, we were talking about all sorts of things, personal responsibility being one of them, and you were helping me to understand something that you've created or creating that's going to help your clients. Do you want to sort of let us into a little bit of that, what it is, but maybe start off with why it came into existence? What was the motivation for you to start to think deeply about this to the point where you wanted to do something about it?
Yeah, okay. I guess in context, when we started Price of Plan, we started just doing people would give us a set of plans, we'd do a detailed estimate on it, and then give that to them, and then that's where they would, exit the support. And then as time's grown, we've realised that estimating is more than just data, more than just a model, more than just the first quote. It's just so much more than that. And we've really shifted our thinking to think about estimating as like this whole ecosystem and it starts from inquiry through to budget qualifying, right through to putting in agreements and educating, delivering a detailed quote, setting it up for construction management, engaging subcontractors, delivering the project on site. And when you think of estimating in that whole big picture, every step of the way, it should all be supporting that ecosystem. Really big shift that I've found was needed because we were learning that from our clients. We were learning their frustrations. And what I saw, I was just really curious, digging into this question that the builders who succeed are the ones that have got a structured process around their business, and they take the guesswork out. They communicate well. They're really good at setting expectations with their clients. But there's also this emotional aspect of it, and how the builder connects with the emotional relationship of each of those steps for themselves personally, and the emotional aspect that the client's going to throw at them. The guys that are really kind of, I call it emotional intelligence within the building industry, I think they're the guys that manage it well. And there's a part of that where it's about responsibility.
Yeah.
Because you can go who, not how, right? And you can engage anybody to give you support to build a house or to build a software or to complete an estimate or to give you coaching. But you don't get the real value out of anything like that unless you know how to manage your responsibility within that particular service or that particular goal that's been set for you.
Yeah. I want to get into personal responsibility in great detail, but before you go on, I just the question that popped into my mind when you said there are some guys who are doing it well, and you talked about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
In Black Belt we talk about emotional fitness. Like I say, it's the equivalent of physical fitness. How long does it take you to go from a peak heart rate down to a resting heart rate is physical fitness. How long does it take you to, I want to rip this bloke's head off, to being calm? How long does it take you to get from there to there is emotional fitness, and then there's emotional intelligence as well. But my question was, what does the emotions look like with the guys who are doing it well that you mentioned, that you've observed, and what does it look like with the guys who aren't doing it well? So what are the emotions that they're dealing with when they're doing it well versus when somebody isn't doing it well? Can you give us some examples of that?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. So I think that it's reactive. The emotions that aren't doing it well, they're in a reactive state.
Yeah.
So they're always reacting to the emotions that are getting thrown at them by the client or the project. They're not anticipating it, as opposed to somebody that's being proactive and anticipating the emotional reaction, and then educating the scenario prior to it coming. So a good example is like one of my clients, we were talking with him recently about this very topic, and he loves the fact that when he uses Pricer Plan to do his estimates, it puts one gap between him and the client, and he promotes the fact that he uses a third party. It's industry, best in practice.
Yes.
They're not my numbers.
Yeah.
They're industry numbers. This is what they are, right? Yeah. So he's detaching himself from that emotional baggage. So then he can then communicate just sort of clinically to the client about the reality of it. So that's an example of where it's being used well. Another client that I was talking to.
Now let's get into the funny one.
The difference between the two here is the client I just talked about there, Ryan, very seasoned, very experienced, been around. He's learned that, right? the other example I'm going to give is a younger guy, chasing his first big job, and he's feeling guilty because the price is so high.
Yeah.
So he's feeling guilt. He's feeling scared that he's not going to win the job. And so the emotions that he's experiencing are putting his own personal well-being at risk and his financial well-being, because he reacts to that by saying to me, and I'm not joking, we presented a big project for him. It was about a $2 million townhouse. It was his first big one. And he said, the developer, red flag developer to start with, but the developer says he's got another price. I need to drop $400,000 off of it. And I'm like, well, I don't think that's possible. And sadly, and I hear this so often, he goes, well, what if I drop my markup?
Yeah, he could have just given the developer the profit, and the builder could have also gone and mortgaged his house and got some money out of his house and given that to the developer as well. So the developer was happy. Yeah, so it's possible. It's possible to do it.
So that's the unfortunate reality. And where I'm so lucky, it's actually the part of my business that I get the most enjoyment out of is listening to where guys are at in their journey and what they're dealing with in that negotiation or that emotional connection. And I just try and always help them come back to good systems. A good process creates calm. When you're calm, you're not reactive, and you can respond to any of those stresses and those variables throughout a project far more effectively when you're taking responsibility for your emotions.
Yeah. Can I just have a quick whinge and a bitch about something? Is that okay?
Go for it. Yeah.
Because whenever I hear the language about winning the job and it's too expensive, like it is what it is, and if you're using best practice and you're gathering, price data from all over the country, it is what it is. That's if you want that thing, that's how much it costs. So it's not the builder. And so two things that really shit me think the builders that think that their prospects are making decisions based on price. It just is not true. Like humans make emotional decisions. That money, price is logic. It's numbers, and you've got what the money represents in one hand. I better get the hand in the shot, and then on the other hand, on the other side of the scales is the value that this builder represents to the client, and it's just this. And so if they're saying the price is too high, what they're really saying is the value that you represent is too low. And if builders stop this bullshit about price competitiveness and worked on themselves to be able to deliver more levels of perceived value from the prospect's point of view, there wouldn't be this issue with price. And you mentioned, emotional and you mentioned proactivity as well versus reactivity. And one of the really, really important things I try to get our guys to understand is everybody has an emotional bank account with everybody else. And you start putting deposits in the emotional bank account as soon as that first phone call, that first interaction with your building business. And if you understand and put effort in and be proactive and go, what's a deposit? What can I do to put another deposit in? Because if you've been around the building business any more than 5 minutes, shit goes south. Like problems happen. It's weather, it's supply, it's somebody's let you down or whatever. And so what the client is expecting sometimes doesn't happen, and it's not the builder's fault. Like stuff goes wrong. If you've been putting deposits in the emotional bank account, when that thing happens, you're going to get the blame for it. But if there's been lots of deposits in the emotional bank account, you make a withdrawal, there's still plenty left, and they go, oh, Haydn, mate, it's not your fault, it's okay. But if you haven't been doing that from the start, you've only got this much in the bank account, and then that thing happens, sorry, you're overdrawn. And then all of a sudden the client is looking for everything to blame on you. And they're looking for things to go wrong. So anyway, I shall step down from the soapbox.
No. It's such a relevant point. It's such a relevant point. And I think that a lot of builders that are listening to this are actively looking for ways to improve themselves and their business, right?
Yeah.
As a mindset that's probably already the fact that they've turned the podcast on in their car or wherever they are, right? And a lot of the teachings that are out there are all about system, right? And there's not many teachings. And to be honest, mate, I think you are the one that does it best. And really, I'm not saying that just because we're here today.
Just because I'm paid to say it.
Is because you tap into the emotional side, there's the human side and the responsibility side of what it's like to run a successful business. And like, I've got one of my clients, he's actually one of my longest standing clients. And he is an absolute nightmare of an administrator.
I thought you were going to give me compliments.
No, it's like, me, Luke, what are you doing? Right? He comes to me at the end of the he's going to hate them. I won't say which Luke it is, but he'll know if he's listening.
There's lots of Lukes.
He'll come to the end of the project and go, oh, yeah, just got a few variations to do. I was like, what do you mean you've got variations to do? Oh, well, about 6 months ago we did this, did that, and did this. And I'm like, oh, man, Luke. But you know what? He pulls it off every single time because he's got that emotional connection. He's a great communicator. He's a great guy. He's able to really tune in to all of his clients' needs and the partners, and he manages his team really well. Perfect. So there's so much to be said for that skill, and not everyone's got it. So, but if you can focus on emotions alongside systems, and if you can anticipate the potential emotions, it lets you manage them when they do arise. I think it's a really powerful message.
Yeah. And just as another aside, something that we've realised in sort of the not so distant past is that most of the solutions that we look for, or if we're working with somebody else, they might offer us, the solutions are generally in the form of a system. And it was really interesting when we had our in person, we call it an intensive with Black Belt just a couple of months ago. We did a thing called a round table mastermind where, half a dozen people sit around a table and your turn, you put your problem on the table and everyone, asks questions to understand it and then gives you a whole bunch of solutions. So you've got a lot of solutions to choose from. So we did that. And I went around the room and I wrote down what was the problem that you had, and I wrote it down. I said, what was the best solution that you got? And I wrote that down. And then I did a whole dog and pony show on this inspiration that I got from watching Moneyball, the movie, which is right at the start of it when they're asking, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? And all of the talent scouts are sitting around the table going, we've got to replace Giambi, who was a superstar who got bought off them at the end of the last season. Right. And Billy Bean, the general manager's going, no, that's not the problem. What's the problem? And he'd ask somebody else and he'd give him some bullshit answer and go, no, that's not the problem. What's the problem? And then eventually Billy Bean goes, here's the problem, guys, that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. Then there's us. So we don't have the money that those big teams have. So we can't employ the solutions that they have. But what I got from all of that is that we don't ask, what's the problem? Like, we don't have a Billy Bean there to say, no, what's the problem? And we look at that problem initially and we don't dive down deep and find out actually what is the problem I'm trying to solve. So we did that with our group. And the amazing thing was that when we did the roundtable mastermind directly after having that, what we found was if we look at what the problem is first, and we genuinely dive deep to find out what the actual problem is, not the apparent problem,
Yeah.
there's probably a 30 to 50% chance that we don't even need a solution, because all it is, the problem was caused by a perception that we had. So
Interesting.
we could change our perception, and we don't need to waste time with the solution. But my point with it is that our default position when we have a problem and we want a solution, the solution is generally a system solution. So every suggestion that we had in the first roundtable mastermind, there's a system, that's a system, that's a system. They were all solutions, were all systems. But when we looked at what the actual problem was, very few of the solutions were systems. They were shifts in perception.
Right. So it was more of the solution came from within.
Absolutely.
Sort of mean?
Yeah. But then,
right.
If the solution, or if there was still needed a solution, at least we applied the right system for the problem. Because if you're chasing after an apparent problem, like the example was, one of our guys has like a really, really full pipeline. So he's starting a wait list. So prospects come in and they join a wait list. And if somebody drops out for whatever reason and makes a gap in the pipeline, the first person in the wait list can jump on there. And so I said, well, before...
Good position to be in.
Yeah, perfect. It's a
where's
quality
the problem here? Not here, everyone.
Well, that was my question. I said, so what's the problem? And he kept giving me the answer. I'm going, nah, what's the problem? Nah, what's the problem? And we eventually got to it. I just really feel bad because I can't help them. And so I said, well, what would putting a wait list together? Because his question was, where should I tell them about the wait list in the process? And I said, well, before we answer that, let's find out what the problem was. And we dove down and found out he felt like he was letting people down.
Felt guilty?
Yeah, felt guilty. And I said, well, if you tell him about the wait list, is that going to stop you from feeling guilty? And it's like, no. It's like, well, the solution and the question you're asking me is irrelevant. What we need to do is work on that guilt. And so we unpacked that and changed his perspective, and that problem went away. Now, he can still have a wait list, but my point is, if you don't look at what the problem actually is, you spend time coming up with a solution, you implement the solution, and guess what? Didn't fix the problem.
Yeah.
Because we didn't discover what the problem was. But I just thought that was really interesting, that our default position is a system to fix our problems. And I'm kind of trying to help people to understand now that it's a 3-part process. We've got to stabilise, then systemise, then scale, because people want to scale for freedom. They want to duck shove stuff off their plate and give it to you, give it to a VA, give it to what have you. But you've got to systemise before you can scale. But before you systemise, you've got to stabilise. And stabilise means, what are my beliefs and what's my mindset and what are my emotions and behaviours around this problem? Because if you can examine that, you can probably change those things. You can change that perspective. Yeah. And then maybe we don't even need a solution. The problem doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of that?
No, it's so bang on, because when you think about, as I talk about estimating, is from inquiry through to delivery, at each stage there's potentially a problem. So at an inquiry stage, if you are anticipating that the client's going to have a combination of curiosity and uncertainty, you don't just throw them a education sheet. You get proactive and you look at it from their point of view, and you gain some emotional intelligence as to what that's like, and then you structure your response to them to help alleviate that curiosity and that uncertainty. So being more insightful prior to reacting and putting in a system will mean that whatever system you do implement is going to be far more effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, before I rudely interrupted you about 20 minutes ago, you started to talk about personal responsibility. What part does personal responsibility play in what you're noticing with builders who are doing well and builders who aren't? Because it seems to me like being proactive is based in personal responsibility. Being reactive is probably blaming the circumstances and blaming the environment and, blaming everything else for what's going on. What have you been deeply thinking in relation to personal responsibility with all this?
Well, I guess on a couple of levels, it's just myself as an individual.
Yep.
Firstly, I'm always wanting to be able to reflect on how I have not just delivered a service, but made the value of that service for our clients. So I'm always reflecting on myself and my interaction, and I'm reflecting on how the business is presenting through those interactions as well. That's an ever evolving thing, and we are constantly shifting to accommodate what the builder needs. But then there's the other side of it, is what's the builder doing to shift and adapt to utilising an outsourced partner like Pricer-Plan? Because what I anticipate, right, here's my emotional intelligence, I am anticipating that majority of people that have not used an outsourced estimator, or even if they have used an estimator before, is they are nervous. Is the first emotion, that they don't trust it, that it's been fucked up before, or whatever it might be, right? So I'm aware of that. So we try and adjust our communication and our whole process to reassure them through that. The builders for us that become long-term users, and I'm talking, we've had some guys with us for over 15 years.
Wow.
That do every single project. They understand that it's a collaboration. And working with, we've tried to reflect on what we think the builder needs to overcome that anxiety or that fear. And we try and structure it like it's a collaboration. There are some clients that come in and they're like, oh, great, you're doing that for me now. Like, there you go. And then they don't use the system. They don't book the follow-up meeting. They don't give review feedback. They don't do that. And then what do you know? They go, oh, no, it was too high. It was a waste of time. I'm never doing that again. So
I shouldn't laugh.
It's the reality of it, right? We much prefer to have those relationships where people understand it's a collaboration and we learn from each other, we grow together, because no one's perfect, no estimate is perfect. But the best we can do is to collaborate to make it as resourceful and robust a system as it can be.
Yeah. And I expect that you do your very best to manage the expectations, but it's something that I talk to our black belt builders about all the time is be very, very clear on the expectations at the beginning and help the prospect to understand this is a team sport. Building is a team sport. It's not you telling me what you want, how much money you can spend, and then my job is to somehow build this thing for the money that you have. Like that, it's a team event. You've got to tell me what your priorities are, and you've got to tell me what your limitations are as far as financial wherewithal. And then I can certainly use my knowledge, skills, and experience to give you as many of your priorities in this project as you can afford. Yeah. But it's not my job to make it happen. Like, I'm not, a genie granting 3 wishes or anything like that. Yeah. So everything always works better when it's a collaboration. And when we all understand that, it'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I see, like a mental shift in relation to that finding the right client that does understand collaboration.
Mm.
So we try and really help our clients have a system by which they're able to interpret and refine which clients are going to have that same mindset.
Yep.
That's a really important part of it, because and the younger guys, the natural reaction when a new opportunity comes along, the emotional reaction is like, oh, here's a great opportunity. It's going to be a great project. Oh, it's going to be a high profile job. Oh, I really want this one. Right. So they're reacting to this like, oh, I really want to get this. But the guys that are seasoned and are doing it well, they're actually cautious, and they're dwindling out all of these potential opportunities to make sure they're finding that right collaboration partner. I mean, it's kind of like you and I are a bit past it, Mick, but it's kind of like
settle down.
It's kind of like,
for yourself.
hang on. Well, wait till you hear the analogy.
Okay, right.
Wait till you hear the analogy.
I jumped in too early.
But it's kind of like I imagine, not that I've ever done it, but like online dating, right? You've got a lot of interest there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of red flags, but occasionally you might find the right match that you're prepared to collaborate with. So that's a really important mindset shift from guys when you're getting new opportunities, is to, just because it's an opportunity doesn't mean it's a good one. It's about finding that right collaboration.
No, my brain went to, and you'll know what I mean, but the metaphor to me was that conversation between the old bull and the young bull walking down to a paddock of cows. We won't go through the rest of the joke, but anybody of any age will know what we're talking about, so we'll just leave it there. Somebody listening to this and going, the pricing and doing proposals and what have you is the bane of my existence. I would like to speak to you and see if you're the right fit for their for their who to do that, rather than learning how to do it themselves. Because it just, the bit I love the most about this is where you said you are in between the builder and the client. You are very professional. You are using best practice. And it's constantly evolving and being refined, and it, it's accurate. Yeah. And it takes the builder out of the crosshairs. And I mean, if you're doing it properly anyway, obviously people have to price a plan to do the pricing, and that cost, that's a cost of the project management that needs to be part of the whole thing anyway. It needs to be paid for before you start the project or even sign the contract. So it's not as if it's rocket science. So
no, it should be paid for. That's right.
What's the go? How they go to priceaplan.com.au. Have you got an AU, or are you just a com?
Yeah, no, we're an AU, priceaplan.com.au. We're getting more and more active on the socials. You'll probably see us there as well, all under Priceaplan. But we provide a lot of different mechanisms that support the whole estimating ecosystem. We give away a free pre-construction process template pack. If anyone wants that, go to the website and send an inquiry. We'll send it to you for free. It helps you establish a series of steps from inquiry through to delivering a detailed estimate. Gives you some framework, so you're not reacting, you're actually in control. We've got a budget qualifying step. It's called a QBE. I think the industry actually uses the term QBE as a bit of a general term for that preliminary step now. But
I have to come clean, and there was that. It's being used a lot everywhere. They call it a QBE, and I've got to come clean and tell you what's going on in Black Belt, because I have banned the acronym from Black Belt.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I can claim it back then.
Yeah. But the reason we did that is, and hopefully people can pick this up. You might even change the name of your product. But I encourage our guys to use the phrase feasibility analysis rather than QBE, because I just noticed our guys were saying QBE in amongst our conversations. But then they started saying it to the client, and we found that what's a QBE? And even when they explained it, it's a quick build estimate.
Yeah.
It didn't have the emotional gravitas of oh, hang on, we're going to do a feasibility analysis. It sounded a lot more scientific and all of that sort of stuff. So
No, I appreciate
lots of
that.
people do say QBE, absolutely. So
Yeah. Well, I'm proud we created that.
Yeah.
That system, and I'm proud of the fact that it's been adopted. You know, the concept's adopted because it's
you've
more
caused me a
important that the
problem
concept's
to
adopted.
fix.
Yeah, but we did change it from quick building estimate to quality budget estimate.
Yeah.
For that reason, we are trying to shift the messaging around what it's for.
Well, you can steal our feasibility analysis if you want to change it to that.
Everything's got to have an acronym in my business. So I'll have to feasibility, FA. Anyway, that's point noted.
Yeah, you get in all sorts of trouble with an acronym that has FA in it.
Yes, I'll have to rethink that one.
Yeah.
But then the next acronym in our service is FQE, which stands for Full Quantity Estimates. That's the real detailed package. That's the real heavy service that we provide. It's very thorough, very collaborative, lots of stages together. We work with the builder. It's not just a bunch of number and datas that you get. There's a whole range of revision cycles that are just built into it because it just has to be that way. We also then do, if you just want trade supply only, so if you just want a block work takeoff, we'll just do a block work takeoff for you. We also then, another solution we've solved in the last couple of years is we take whatever, everyone's using a different software system to manage their business.
Yep.
And we now can implement all of our data and map it according to whatever their software is.
Oh, nice.
And then we upload and set up all their project data for them into their software so they're project ready. And then we also have 3D structural models. So just a 3D model that relates purely to the structural components, directly related to the cut lists that we're providing on the project. And it's not a be-all, take-all from all that. You can just take one little piece of the support and hopefully that alleviates a lot of the pain points that we know a lot of builders experience when they're trying to work within that whole ecosystem of estimating.
Yeah. And the best way to find out whether that's going to work for you, folks, is just to take the car for a test drive. Just go do it. But you know, I think that we've talked about this before. I remember talking about it when we were on the podcast last. You know, there takes a little bit of time to bed in, you know, to the relationship, because it is a collaboration. You've got to work together, and so, you know, it might take a little bit of refining and polishing to get it right. But obviously, if you've got people that have been with you for 15 years, it's like they can't still be trying to figure it out. They keep coming back, you know, time after time for 15 years. You've got to be doing something right.
Yeah. And I think, like, if I can I know, maybe reassure some of the people that do doubt the system, that, you know, we're now pricing over $500 million worth of project value per year.
Wow.
Across Australia. So we've got a team of 25, and I've got dedicated people on database analysis, dedicated people on feedback analysis. And so it just gets more and more refined. And all of those, because of our process is so collaborative, and we're working with builders in Victoria or South Australia, whatever, and we're getting information back about their subcontractors, for example, well, that loops back into our system and builds up our database. So, yeah, I'm really proud of that. We've been doing this for quite some time, and it just keeps getting bigger and better, and I get prouder and you know, more satisfaction out of the fact that I can tune into not just the numbers for the builder, but actually tune into what they need in an individual contract relationship or negotiation. It's probably the most satisfying thing for me. I love it.
Yep. Yeah. So just wanted to say thanks for jumping on the podcast. But what I love about what we're doing with the podcast is just having these conversations and finding people like yourself who are genuinely contributing through desire, through passion, to the betterment of the building industry. You know, that's what it's all about. It's that we're just finding so many people on the podcast like yourself who have a passion and a commitment to just contributing to the betterment of the industry, which, it needs it.
I sincerely really appreciate that, because it is how I feel, Nick, and the same goes for you. What you've provided for a long time now and continue to adapt and provide for the industry and messaging is just so valuable, mate. So thank you. It means a lot.
Excellent stuff. I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll be talking to you, because lots of cool things are happening. But thanks very much for being on the show, and I guess we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Mick. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
So there you go, folks. Jump over to pricerplan.com.au. The links will be in the description anyway. I don't know how many conversations I've been part of over the journey with frustrated builders because they just dislike the pricing, estimating side of it. It soaks up a whole lot of time, and I just can't emphasize the fact enough that when you have a specialist that takes care of that, because a builder just by default has to be everything, it seems. They have to be a counsellor, a conflict resolution. They have to be a mathematician, a psychologist, unbelievable, breadth of skills. And you just can't be great at everything. And so be great at what you're great at, and then start to look for people to fill those spots in the areas that you either don't have the passion for, or you're not as good as you could be. Look for that who, not how. So hope that makes sense. Make sure you fill out the Builders Freedom Readiness Scorecard. The link will be in the description. It'll take you 2 minutes. You'll be glad you did. Best ROI of 2 minutes that you will ever spend. And we will be back with another episode of the ToolShed podcast. Before you know it, I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. I'm out. Bye for now. That is all.
You've been listening to the ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.